everyone, Cinema Buffs here, bringing you the last episode of my holiday movie reviews as Nate and I sit down and talk about the Frank Capra classic, It's a Wonderful Life. Now, It's a Wonderful Life, this is the ultimate classic. You know, it gets played on whatever network for 24 hours on Christmas Day, just like Christmas Story. Mm-hmm. And it's one of these movies where, even if you haven't seen it, like Nate hadn't until we watched it, it's a movie you know about. It's things you notice imagery from, lines from, and it's just one of these classic movies. And watching it again now, I gotta say this movie is so of its time.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous how of this time this movie is. This movie's 75 years old. When you watch it today, it shows. Like in the opening scene, like first of all, they talk about George Bailey, Jimmy Stewart's character, as a kid, and he's like 10 years old and he's got a job. Like, that's so of its time. Yeah. And also like that blatant misogyny that he shows towards like the schoolgirls, like, oh damn, don't you dames know nothing? Like this is a very old timey movie.
Yeah.
And I think that it's throughout this movie that you get that old timey feel. Mm-hmm. And so like while some of that can be a little distracting for me, personally.
Yeah?
It was just a tad distracting. But overall, I mean, watching this movie again as a kid, like Christmas Vacation is the movie I watched with my dad. It's a Wonderful Life is the movie I watch with my mom. It's her favorite Christmas movie. We watch it every year. And so I was a little bit taken out of the experience this time. But at the same time, you know, this is just a classic. And I'm really curious to hear what you think about this movie, Nate. Because I know leading up to it, you heard from equal amount of people that it's the greatest Christmas movie ever. And it's the slowest movie you'll ever watch in your life.
Yeah.
And I kind of think both sides are right. But what do you think of this movie, having seen it for the first time?
There are truth in both sides. I think I have this weird advantage over the majority of people. Seeing this for the first time at 32 years old. Like,
yeah.
I didn't grow up celebrating Christmas. I celebrated Hanukkah. So although I watched a lot of Christmas movies, It's a Wonderful Life wasn't like this tradition that the family had to watch, which I think it was a regularity for, most families.
For my family.
Yeah, exactly. And I honestly was blown away by this movie. You say that it is of its time, but man, there's such relevant themes in this film to today, to being an adult, to being a kid, to what your dreams, what you want out of life, and how life can take turns. I just felt like this movie I can see why it's so beloved. I really, really enjoyed my experience watching this movie, like a lot.
Yeah. Like I said, the of its time thing, that was a little distracting, but it doesn't take away from the magic that this movie is.
No.
I think that, like, the classic era film, like pre-1970s, for my money, Jimmy Stewart is the greatest classic actor of all time.
He can be the greatest actor of all time.
This guy just oozes charisma. He's funny. He's charming. He's one of those characters where it's like, if he's the lead role, you almost instantly sympathize with him. You feel for him. You root for him.
Yeah.
Because he's that great in this role. And I think this is his signature role, George Bailey. And George Bailey is just a man of broken dreams. He has all these ambitions, all these goals, all these things that he wants to do. And through, just circumstance and life happening, he's not allowed to do them. He can't go to Europe and have fun before he goes to college because his father died. He has to take care of his father's business. Yeah. He can't go to college because he has to take care of his father's business.
Yeah.
All these things that he wanted to do, but he couldn't. He couldn't go to college after his brother got back because his brother went to go do his own thing.
Yeah.
And so, and then that's what leads to ultimately where the plot comes into hand. Like, George Bailey wonders, should I even exist? Should I continue on?
What's the point?
What's the point? He wants to kill himself. And then the angel Clarence comes in and shows him what life would have been like without him. And I think that's when this movie really starts to pick up speed, when Clarence shows up.
It does. It is, some people would call it a slower movie, but instead, I think it's a smarter movie. I think that it doesn't take its audience for granted, and it doesn't treat the audience like idiots. It takes its time, and going back to Jimmy Stewart's performance of how this man can convey something in 30 seconds with facial expressions that most actors would have to do in 15 minutes of dialogue. Mm-hmm. This guy can act. I think that it does pick up speed a little bit. I mean, it does pick up speed when the angel arrives, but I looked at the mark. The angel arrives at like an hour and 40 minutes in.
To a 2 hour and 10 minute movie.
To a 2 hour and 10 minute movie.
Right. It's one of those things where it's like the plot, the log line given to you is that a man sees how his life would be without him.
Right.
And it takes that long in the movie to get into it, but like the real meat of it is showing George Bailey who he is and how he's impacted these people.
Which is so important.
Yes, and only later do they show what it's like without him.
Yeah.
But I think that just makes the first half of the movie even better. Because you realize that, yes, he is a man of broken dreams, but he's also one of the most selfless people.
And it's this weird, realistic look at life, and sometimes always doing the right thing can be punishable. And that's what happens to George Bailey. He doesn't get rewarded for all the great things he does. He gets punished to the point of borderline suicide.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I've been doing nothing great my whole life, and nothing's come of it. He has come up last. And I think the irony is there. Even like Mr. Potter, nothing bad happens to Mr. Potter, even at the end. There's no service there.
No.
No, it's just like people carry on. That's life. That's the way it goes. One thing I want to mention is the structure of it, as being that the angel arrives with 40 minutes left in the movie. This is almost structurally opposite of what it would be if it was remade today. God forbid this movie ever gets remade, because I would hate that. But if this movie was remade today, I bet you the first 40 minutes would be getting to know George Bailey, and then
The last hour and
a half would be the angel scene, which is not the way it should go. Like,
No.
it just shouldn't. Getting to know these characters is what's so awesome about this movie.
Yeah, I mean, and we've clamored about Jimmy Stewart's performance. And I would say what is equally great in this movie is Frank Capra's direction.
It is.
I think that the way he paced the movie, and because how I said, like, yeah, I could see how some people can see this as one of the slowest movies ever.
Yeah.
And I think that harkens back to how it's a movie of its time, where these movies back then, because, you know, back in 1942 when this movie came out, it wasn't a thing like Nate and I, we've probably, between the two of us, been to the theater maybe 80 times this year.
Yeah.
Back in 1942, it was like a once-a-year thing.
Yeah.
So these movies had to take their time to tell this big story and, like, really provide this once-a-year kind of experience for people.
And it does it.
Yeah, and I think that it's executed very well. And not only is Jimmy Stewart fantastic as George Bailey, Donna Reed,
So good.
she was fantastic.
You
in
fall in
this
love with
movie.
this girl. She's just beautiful and charming and sympathetic. Like, she really believes. She's the only one that believes in George Bailey, really.
Yeah. It's kind of a thing where yes, this movie is a journey with George Bailey, but we see this movie like through her eyes.
Yeah.
We see how great George Bailey is, even when he doesn't see it in himself.
Yeah.
But she knows, and we know.
The whole like loses her robe in the bush scene is just so funny and so like well done, and the director lets the actors do their job. You know, this is a movie where there's not these quick cuts all the time where it's back and forth between dialogue. He puts the camera there and he lets the actors act, and that's what he trusts, and it works. It's not these fancy directing type of situations or anything like that. It's just like, it's simply done but effective at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. And not only is, yes, the direction is masterful, the acting's top-notch, just everything, the music, the cinematography, the editing. There is a reason why this movie is held in such high regards, and it's because it's that good.
It is. I'm so glad that I watched this movie. I'm so upset that it took me so long to watch it. At the same time, I'm glad I wasn't like sat and forced as a kid to be like, watch this movie, it's great. I got to absorb it. And another thing that struck me, it's not a flaw by any means, but not really a Christmas movie. Christmas doesn't happen until the last half hour. Like, it's pretty much just a story about life.
No.
And Christmas just happens to be the punctuation at the end of the story.
Exactly.
Of like, you know, enjoying life and the generosity and the good in people at the end that actually can come from everything when things seem so low. But honestly, I was waiting for the Christmasness to come out, because I've only seen highlights here and there, and it's mostly like, an angel gets its wings, or like, I'm at the end of my rope.
Yeah,
But there's like all those scenes, but I never like realized there's not much Christmas in it.
No, and it's not a movie that plays too heavy on the themes of Christmas. But it is a movie about life that takes place at Christmas.
Yep.
So while Christmas is prevalent, it is in the movie. It's just it's also a thing where you could have made this movie take place any other time of year, and it would have been just fine. But I think the Christmas just adds another element to it and makes it a traditional thing where it's my family watches every Christmas, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and from now on, I'll be watching it every Christmas.
So, Nate, like I said, this has been a tradition in my family for a long time. Watched every year. Just watching it again. Just felt so good. But I'm really curious to hear what your score is on the 1 to 5 on the feel-good scale. What do you mark this, as far as getting you in that feel-good holiday spirit?
On the feel-good scale, what I want to say is that this movie made me feel so many things. Like, it's not necessarily feel good, but it made me feel. But on the feel good scale, I'd probably give it a 4 still. Like, I was smiling at the end. I was feeling great about all of it. But when it comes to holidays, like I said, the Christmas aspect of it was missing a little bit here and there. But all in all, a 4 out of 5. It makes you feel great at the end.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this movie, it does make you feel not good exactly at every corner, but at the end, you get this great payoff with, just George Bailey getting out of this horrible situation that he didn't find himself in, that someone else put him in.
Exactly.
And even when life is just crapping on him that much and he feels like there's, no end to it and he just should end his life, he gets all this generosity, it all comes back to be paid to him.
Yeah.
So I gotta say that overall, this movie it brings me into the spirit and just makes me feel good, makes me feel good about everything about life. So I'm not gonna go a full 5, but I will go 4.5 out of 10.
But
Or
real
out of
quick,
5.
since I've never seen it, if I had to score it, I'd go a 9 out of 10. I would
Yeah.
say. I mean, I would go 9 out of 10. I know that people find it a little bit slow, but this is one of the best movies I've seen this year, easily.
Happy to hear it.
Yeah.
So that's it for our review of It's a Wonderful Life. Have you guys seen this classic? You need to be like Nate and just jump on this and experience this movie
See it.
finally.
Yeah.
What'd you think of the review? What do you think of the movie? Why don't you go ahead and comment down below. And don't forget to show your love for the show by liking, sharing, and subscribing. We really appreciate all the support at Cinema Buffs.
Yeah.
And we want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, blessed Kwanzaa, any holiday that you're celebrating with your family. Have fun. Be safe. We look forward to the new year. But don't forget the true meaning of the holiday season.
There's no place like the theater.